Hello and welcome to episode 13 of the Zesty Dietitian Podcast. I'm your host, Mackenzie Caldwell, registered dietitian and founder of Feed Your Zest, nutrition and wellness. Today, I'm going to be interviewing one of my associate dietitians here at Feed Your Zest. She's also a lactation consultant, Natalie Ostrowski. I had so much fun talking to Natalie in this episode. It's a really deep conversation, rich with information and tips for navigating all of the mental and emotional pieces of pregnancy and birth and PCOS. We talk about Natalie's personal journey with PCOS, trying to conceive, getting pregnant, her pregnancy journey, her birth story, and lactation, as well as some of the tips that she has for each stage of the journey overall. It is such a great episode. Before we jump in, a little bit more about Natalie specifically. Natalie Ostrowski is a registered dietitian nutritionist and international board certified lactation consultant. Prior to joining the team at Feed Your Zest, she has worked in community health clinics as well as a birth center and a breastfeeding medicine clinic. Beyond her clinical experience, she understands firsthand the difficulty of navigating the U.S. healthcare system, feeling confused by irregular menstrual cycles, and experiencing challenges with fertility. She is deeply passionate about supporting folks in attaining their reproductive and nutrition health goals, while also making the world of nutrition more clear and approachable. Sometimes sifting through the myriad of feelings and emotions that come up when we talk about food and body image can be challenging. She sees her role as being your guide through these conversations while also offering tailored evidence-based recommendations to help you along the way. So without further ado, let's jump into my conversation with Natalie. Hello, Natalie. Thank you so much for joining us on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to get started.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been so great having you on the team for the last year and a half, minus maternity leave, but still, yeah. You're back. You've been back for a bit now.
Yeah, it's been really fun.
Yeah. So I'm so pumped to jump into our conversation today so people can hear a little bit more about who you are as a person and a dietitian. So my first question that I like to ask all of my clients, it's on our initial assessment, and I like to ask it to our podcast guests as well, is what are some of your favorite foods?
Yeah, it's a great question, and one of my favorite questions. It's funny because I was thinking about this. I ask people this all the time, and I was like, it's actually kind of hard because there's so many, but I think I love miso soup. I really love different Japanese dishes, but miso soup's one of my favorites. It's the thing I always want when I'm sick.
Yeah.
Roasted squash. Love roasted butternut squash, which is coming into season, which is really exciting. Street tacos. We get a lot of street tacos out here in California, and it's definitely a go-to. Spicy salsa. And then probably chocolate chip cookies, another big fave.
Those are some great foods, like a mix of savory and sweet, delicious. We got a vegetable in there. We've got not vegetables in there. Yep. Delicious. I love all of that. That's great. And what are some of your favorite ways to move your body?
I'd say, I think my go-to has always kind of been, I love walking. I go on walks all the time, and that's been really, really helpful postpartum. But I do really love and enjoy running. I love running, jogging. I don't track myself or pace myself. I just run. And it's just a really helpful way for me to tune out the noise, just kind of get back in my body. Occasionally here and there I'll go through spurts of really enjoying yoga. I like sometimes just gently heated room yoga. And then I think other things that we do just kind of as a family and that my partner and I really enjoy doing together are just going on bike rides or going on hikes in different areas. We have to kind of get out of where we live right now to find some hills. It's very flat where I live, but loved getting outside and going on a hike. That's been fun too. Yeah.
And you've taken baby Oliver camping multiple times already.
Yeah. That, and all thanks to my husband. He was the motivation. He was like, it's going to be hard. Let's just do it. And it has been. But, we've found our strategies, found our ways, what do we need to pack? And how do we, what do we need to make this doable? And we've probably taken him camping about five or six times now.
Wow. That is I told my mother about this. I was like, Natalie went camping again. And she was like, I could never. I have two siblings. She's like, literally never would have done that with you guys.
No, it's hard. And it's the kind of thing that's like, you just have to kind of rip the Band-Aid off. Like, expect discomfort.
Yeah.
And it gets easier every time. And he's gotten older, and now,
Sure.
you know, I mean, everything gets easier, but then there's also new challenges. That's just like what I'm learning with parenthood.
Sure.
But it's been fun to see,
in general,
just to see his wonder and excitement being outside and playing with rocks and eating dirt, and that's like the best part.
I love that. Yeah, I love it. That's fantastic. And we're absolutely going to dive more into like motherhood stuff. But first, I want to hear a little bit more about you professionally. How did you decide to become a dietitian?
It was a long, winding road. In my undergrad, I studied sustainable agriculture and food systems, and got really into farming and understanding just how food is grown and all of the systems around that. I ended up working on some farms afterwards, which wasn't part of the plan, but just ended up being what I wanted to do. And I worked on some like vegetable farms, chicken farms, and then started working a lot of farmers markets. And that's where I would say like the love for talking about food and helping people to understand. I mean, talking about recipes, and then I get lots of questions about like, oh, I heard this is good for this. Is that true? And from my knowledge, I didn't quite feel qualified answering those questions, but I would do my best. But I think that was kind of where it was spurned. I was like, I would love to be able to actually give some evidence-based qualified answers to these questions, because I think I'm so interested in knowing more about it myself. I'd say that was a big piece of it. Also, my sister had cancer when she was around 28 years old, so quite young, and it was pretty serious. And I remember food and nutrition just being such a core part of her treatment plan, and it making such a big difference for her and how she felt day to day. So I think the power of it right in front of me like that was a big piece of it too. And finally was able to find a program that combined the public health with nutrition. And then I found, some lactation consultant training that I added in too, but that was kind of the road that got me there to the dietitian, because it was like, I can be clinical, I can do something in the world of medicine somewhat, but it's still food-based and it's still creative, and I can still talk about food I like to eat and recipes with people, which is like the really fun part for me. So it's a nice balance.
Yeah, absolutely. And like with Natalie and I did the same program. Were you like 2 years behind?
I started in
me, maybe?
I think it was 2019. When did you finish?
Okay, I started, so 3 years behind me. I started in 2016. But that's how we connected. Natalie was my intern because obviously I knew the program director, but it's such a great program in that like we learned so much clinical nutrition stuff, but getting that public health aspect, I think just even though we don't work in public health right now, it just helps us understand our patients and the systems that they live in. And I think just gives a whole different like level of compassion and understanding, helping people just navigate.
Agreed. And I think knowing like
all the things.
Research, how to like interpret research,
I
think was a big piece that didn't go in expecting, but that comes up all the time with clients. I'm like, oh, I heard this, I saw this in the news. And I think being able to, from a public health lens, being able to understand how was the research designed and like what actually is that telling us, and how much can we take that as truth or fact or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, that was a really helpful piece too.
Yeah, absolutely. And that school, Gilling School of Global Public Health, has nutrition, but then we also have the maternal and child health department. And then there's that lactation piece there too. So tell us more about how you decided to do that program and what that program was like for you.
Yeah. Oh, I loved it. I'll say like one big piece of it that I didn't add in yet was my mom was a labor and delivery nurse as I grew up, and my whole life. So she was in that for like 30 plus years. And so women's health, reproductive health, pregnancy, breastfeeding, but more so the pregnancy part, like that has always been a big piece of my, like, I'd say like family lineage and discussion. It's always up and being discussed. And I've always had such a big passion for it, I think. And then, partly because of that, but I really, like, my goal going into grad school was like, I would love to be able to focus on women's health and nutrition. And in my experience, it was really hard to find that specialty within the nutrition program that we were in. I did find some maternal and child health classes that I could add in just on my own for like where I could squeeze it in for electives, but I really wanted more, and it seemed like breastfeeding was like the thing that would allow me to study more of the women's health nutrition piece. And they have at Gillings, they have the Global Breastfeeding Institute is what it's officially called. And within that, they have a lactation consultant training, and I believe it's a pathway 2 program, meaning you have to do the academic portion and then also lots of like in hospital clinical training to get your hours, so many hours. And I applied for it my first year. I was so excited and I really wanted to get in, and the director contacted me and she was like, so you can't actually do it your first year, like it's just not compatible with the classes that you have to take. She's very familiar with our program, the dietitian program. And she's like, but you can apply next year. And I was like, okay. And I got really involved in like a student group that's closely connected to it, and ran that for a year. And then I applied the second year and I got in, and I was so excited. And so you set up, it's like an academic course each semester, and then you do your hours at local hospitals. And I found it was just amazing. I loved having access to actually like be on a postpartum floor, have access to patients and understand the experience of like being in a hospital, being postpartum, trying to breastfeed or chest feed. And I think it's so hard to find that access. It's so hard to see like that world until you're like a full RN or a doctor. You don't really, like get that experience. And it was so valuable working underneath the other lactation consultants. There's, you have to like find, you have this checklist of different conditions that you're supposed to like gain some insight on treating. And so we just saw such a variety of clients, and I loved it. And I never really knew how it was all going to work together in the future, but I was like, this is just like really lighting me up. This is really exciting. And I know it's the right thing. So I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that you were able to kind of find that specialty. I think personally, I was like trying to pick and choose those electives like you did, but it really is a little bit of a gap in dietetics education, because it's such a nutritionally vulnerable time of life. Like us as dietitians, we learn, and we learn in our WIC rotations, like why that program exists, why nutrition is so important in this stage of life. But then it's kind of like, this is important, and then there's no follow-up to that. Or they'll be like, oh yeah, PCOS involves insulin resistance. And there's like, that's it. So I love that you were able to get that.
Yeah, excuse me. I remember like there being like one day we talked about breastfeeding and lactation in our like life cycle class. Maybe one day we talked about PCOS. I did a project on it, so I did a little bit more. But like that was kind of it. And I was like, let's do more of this. I wanted more.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. And speaking of PCOS, you've shared with me that you personally have PCOS. How did you get diagnosed with PCOS?
Yeah, I think similar to a lot of our clients, it was a long, winding road to find the right providers to like do the work to help me figure that out. But I had been on hormonal birth control for a very long time, and was not, and I'll be totally transparent, I have nothing to hide. I was on a Mirena IUD, and it's very common with those that like people do not typically bleed on, like have regular cycles with that. And so I wasn't, and I figured that was normal. So then as I was, actually it was like right around the time I was in grad school, my husband and I were talking about like getting closer to the time when we'd be ready to start trying to have a baby. And I just like, I had no idea what was going on with my cycle because I wasn't really having one. So I think I switched to a non-hormonal IUD. I still wasn't getting a regular cycle with that, which is pretty, I don't know if I would say abnormal, but it's not common. Usually people have heavier periods with those. So then I was like, that's kind of what triggered me. Like I kind of thought like there's something going on, but what is it? I ended up finding a provider who ran some basic labs, well, not just basic, but also hormone labs, and had pointed out there's nothing super obvious, just like very irregular cycles to start with. But then they pointed out that my LH was a lot higher than my FSH, which can be one sign. And so they're like, take it with a grain of salt, but that could be one indicator that you might have PCOS. And so that's when I started really digging into it. And it wasn't until I finally found a different clinic. I think it was an OBGYN clinic that I found when I was still in North Carolina, that really focused in on like more, I'd say just, what's the right word? Detailed work to diagnose conditions, more subtle labs than are usually done. And that's where I did like a 3-hour fasted glucose test there. Not pregnant, but that's unusual. They also tested my like fasted insulin. So it was just helpful to see. We did uncover a little bit of like some insulin resistance, but that's where I ended up also getting an ultrasound, and they did actually see like I had cystic ovaries at that time, and so that was enough with the irregular cycles to diagnose PCOS with. And so that was helpful. It was just like helpful to know that. It's like that's a very important piece of the puzzle, and I wouldn't say it stopped there. The sun came out and everything was fine. It was like, okay, now what? And it's really scary. It's scary because some of those, like, you just Google it, right? And I'm sure lots of our clients know this. Like, it's scary because a lot of times people will tell you like, oh, you can't have children, or just all of the risks, and I think it's really hard to know like how is it really going to impact my life? So yeah, that was the beginning of trying to figure out how to navigate forward with that.
Yeah, it's crazy, like the lack of information that people are given about their bodies in general. And I don't think it's ever any doctor or provider's fault per se. A lot of it has to do with the amount of time that they're given in a day to be able to see people, and like the amount of training that they have, etc. But yeah, that's a super common experience for a lot of our patients, whether it's PCOS or endometriosis. It just is like, it takes a long time to finally figure out like what the heck is going on. And that's crazy that they gave you that full 3-hour glucose tolerance test. I think now the international PCOS guidelines, I think it might be a 1 or a 2-hour glucose tolerance test that they recommend, but I never see it actually done.
I don't either.
Outside of pregnancy.
Yeah. I think,
which is really interesting because an A1C an elevated A1C is a clear indicator of insulin resistance, but a lot of folks with PCOS can have kind of underlying insulin resistance where their bodies can still compensate to keep their blood sugar technically in range, but then still have some hormonal side effects from the elevated insulin.
Right.
So that's so great that you were able to access that.
Yeah, and
for sure.
I mean, it was just interesting. Like that provider, I remember she shared with me that she had PCOS, and it was like a personal interest of hers too. So I always make sure to share with my clients too that I have it, because I think it's just, it's just to know that experience a little bit, the depth of it, I think is helpful. But yeah, she had really dug into it, and like, it was unique. And that's what's sad, is that it is unique to find somebody, I think, that wants to dig deeper before you're trying to get pregnant. That was the thing.
Yeah.
We were not trying. And a lot of people, told me like, we'll try to get pregnant for a year, and if that's an issue, then we'll talk, basically. I was like, well, I want to know what's going on before that point, so that it's not as difficult,
Yeah, so it's not as difficult, and PCOS is not just a reproductive health condition, it is a metabolic one as well. So there's even if you never wanted children, it would be important for you to know what's going on with your body so you can just keep an eye on things overall. What was the name of that doctor? Or if you don't remember, we can put it in the show notes.
I will have to get back to you on that. Because I remember that clinic, I think they've shifted their focus a bit, and that I know that provider left, which was unfortunate because I tried to see her again, but she was gone. But I'll do some research, and hopefully we can put it in the notes. Yeah,
absolutely. It's always helpful to have good referrals. We've got some great folks that we refer to here in the Charlotte area, and I'm sure you have some in the Davis area as well. But now that you have this diagnosis and you've had it for a few years, what are some of your self-care non-negotiables for your body with PCOS?
I think the biggest one that I really try my best to enact is stress management. And I say that because I think that's the thing that I've noticed can have the biggest impact on my cycles, is just periods of stress. And I will see, and this was especially, actually, interestingly, when I was like doing all my internships in grad school, I like did not have a cycle for like 3 months or 4 months, and that was unusual. Like I'd had long cycles, but that was kind of like one of the longest. And so I know that about my body. So I try. The more I can have rhythms, I feel like the better I feel, and I know that the more regular my cycles are. So like trying to get to bed, around the same time each night, and that's been easier since having Oliver. Trying to have some movement, even just like getting outside, walking, or even just getting outside. Step one. Yeah. That feels really good. Yeah. Having some movement, making sure I'm eating, meals and snacks throughout the day, but especially like protein. I really focus on having some protein throughout the day, my meals and snacks, to support blood sugar. I think that's makes me actually feel the best too. So, not having coffee first thing, having a meal, or like having some other beverage to hydrate or eat. But I think especially it just always comes back to the stress management for me. And I will be honest, that has been more difficult since being postpartum and having a baby.
Of course. Yeah.
But I feel like I'm slowly getting back into my own, like having some me time alongside us time.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's almost a year, right?
Yes.
His birthday's in October.
Yeah, that is
oh my gosh,
blowing my mind.
That is crazy. Yeah. Tell us a little bit more about your pregnancy journey with him.
The pregnancy overall was honestly great. I think I feel very lucky that I felt physically well for the most part. I think the things that, like, what comes up for me when you ask that question, I think initially feeling just like really wanting everything to be okay and work out. Like that brought me some concern the first trimester, I would say, especially. We'd had a miscarriage like 4 months prior to conceiving him. So I was just in this place of a little bit of fear and just really wanting to trust my body, but also just being scared that the same thing was going to happen again. So that I think it impacted me in ways I did not think it was, and I didn't really recognize that until like I actually had him. There's a piece of me that was like, I don't know if this is real, until I could then eventually feeling kicking and like obviously it's real, it's happening. But there's just this piece, it's not logical, it's just like I will believe it when he's in my arms kind of feeling, So I think that was mentally, I think that was a challenge for me to get through. But I did my best to take moments, deep breathe, have some, time to meditate. I found some really great pregnant mother, pregnant parent meditation audio files to listen to, so that was really helpful. But yeah, I think I felt really good, and I remember, because it had been such a struggle to get pregnant. It had been, it's always relative for everybody, but I think it ended up being about like 14 months, I think, from when we were kind of officially started trying. And yeah, I think I was just so grateful. I was just so grateful to my body. Yeah. And I remember thinking, like, I am never, of course this is harder being postpartum now, but like I'm never going to judge my body. I'm never going to like talk bad to it. I never want to critique it, because look what it's doing. It's so amazing. Yeah. It's doing this well. It knows what to do. And I go back to that moment a lot now, thinking about that. And it has been really helpful, because I think it is amazing. And I was just so grateful to be in that place. In the beginning, from like a food dietitian perspective, it was really interesting for me, because I could not stomach eggs or salmon. And I was like, oh man, those are some of the most nutritious things. Like, I need those things. And my husband Daniel would be like, how about salmon tonight? And I'd be like, How about no? Like, you can put it in front of me. I'm not going to eat it.
Yeah.
Something about it, I just couldn't. And that lasted a while, like probably until like middle of my third trimester. It was quite a while. I just couldn't do it. But overall, it wasn't, the only thing I really think of that was uncomfortable was like long car rides. In the end, especially the third trimester, I don't know what he was doing in there. I felt like he was doing somersaults or kicking or something, but that was rough. But overall, it was great, and I felt good. It was a really hot summer here in Sacramento throughout the pregnancy, so I got out and walked every day during like my lunch break. I was just hydrating constantly. That's what I remember.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I bet. And I think your experience with like the mental, emotional piece of being pregnant after a miscarriage is so common. I hear that. I'm sure you've heard it from some of your clients too. That feeling of like, I don't know if I am going to let myself believe that this is real because I'm just so scared that it's something's going to happen or whatever. But I love that you were able to find those meditations. And I know there's an app that I recommend sometimes, but what was the specific meditations you were listening to?
Oh, I think mine was through an app also. I don't know. That's something else I'll research and share with you. Cause I think there were a couple and they had like different meditations that were about like just, body trust and connecting with your baby and just kind of letting stress and concern or expectation go. That were all really helpful.
Yeah.
I think.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Oh, I was just going to say that I think that the app that I recommend sometimes is called Expectful. Does that sound familiar to you?
That might have been it. Yeah.
Might have been. Yeah. They definitely have a lot of good ones. And then my dietitian colleague, oh my God, I'm totally blanking on her name right now. Live Fertile. What is her name? I can picture her face. I was literally on a podcast with her like 3 weeks ago. Oh my God. I'll put that in the show notes too. But she's a yoga teacher and she has a great YouTube channel with a bunch of different yoga flows, but she also just does like guided meditations for fertility, and some of them, I think she might have a couple for pregnancy as well. But we'll put those resources in the show notes as well. And I know that you had plans of trying to give birth in a birth center, correct?
Never a birth. I worked in a birth center. I was working doing lactation at a birth center. I heavily considered it. It hasn't, unfortunately, since then. It's closed. Sad, but
bummer.
I actually, from the very beginning, knew I wanted to try for a home birth, and it wasn't.
Home birth.
It wasn't because it was like the end all be all. It has to happen this way. It's more just like that was what was normalized for me, that we were all born at home. I watched my little brother be born when I was 4 in our like family bedroom, and it was a really amazing experience. And so it was just kind of like, that's what I'm going to do. Like, that's just kind of the way I always pictured it. While my mom did work in the hospital, like she very much like had those experiences, and I'd hear lots of stories. And so that was still, it wasn't like completely foreign, but I think for me, I'd always really just pictured it that way, and like having a tub and just, you know, having like a familiar space around us. And it started that way, but it did not end that way.
Take it, whatever you're comfortable with. I'd love to hear a little bit more about that story.
Well, let's see where to start. So they say with your first baby, it's very typical to go full term and then beyond even a little bit, like sometimes to 41. I would have to check to be completely sure, but I feel like it's somewhere around like 41 in a few days that I think a lot of people end up delivering if you let it go that long without any induction. So anyways, that's all to say, I was really expecting to go to 40 weeks. And so imagine my surprise. There was a little trickle of fluid around like 38 and like 3, I think is when that happened. And I didn't quite think it was, well, I knew. I was like, that's not normal. Like, that's probably amniotic fluid. My midwife, we'd had the plan. We'd been seeing this midwife for months. the whole time. The plan was to deliver at home. And we had like some discussions about like backup options for if needing to transfer. And there was a great hospital in Davis. That was the plan. And so that, when that like fluid trickle happened, I connected with the midwife. They were like, okay, well, it wasn't like a gush. It wasn't like a flow. Like it was just a little bit. So they said like, get a good night of sleep. We'll just reassess in the morning. And I was like, okay. And so the next morning I get up and it's a much bigger amount of fluid, and they wanted me to test the pH to see if it was amniotic fluid pH, not just water or like pee, urine. I would know if that was it, I think. Yeah. But so my, I feel like one of the funniest parts of the story is like what we used to test the pH was my husband's, he works in like plants and agriculture. He has like a soil pH meter. And he had it like in the garage. And so instead of going to the store and getting like little strips of paper, he's like, I have a pH meter. And we just like cleaned it off and used that and put it in the fluid. And it was definitely the pH of amniotic fluid. So we're like, okay, so the bag has broken to some extent. So that kind of starts a timeline a little bit of like how long you can go with your waters being broken. And the issue was my labor just wasn't starting. Like I was not having contractions at all. And so then made a plan with my midwife, started taking some herbal tinctures and using a breast pump, because that can also be very stimulating for the uterus. So I was doing that like hourly, and nothing really was getting started. So that was like that whole day, that whole night. We're into the next day. Continuing to try those strategies, and like things would like kind of pick up a little bit. And meanwhile, I've been having Braxton Hicks contractions for a very long time, like throughout the third trimester, especially the second half. I would get those, but I was never getting any consistent contraction patterns. So by the second evening, it's all over. It's just like there's so much time. It was all just like such a gray area, but I think it was like, so the evening, the whole second day, nothing. Then by the next day, which was a Friday, it wasn't until Friday around like 8 p.m. that Daniel was doing this like calf massage. And I think it just, I don't know what it was. I also had drinking like a castor oil smoothie that my midwife had given us the recipe for. Still taking the herbs, still doing the pumping, but getting really exhausted on the pumping and having a lot of compassion from all my lactation clients who pump in that moment. I was like, wow, this is hard. And finally, like something happened. Like I started getting some contractions, and it started really increasing, getting consistent and pretty strong. It came on pretty strong once it finally started. And things just like went from there, and I like got really like it just got more and more powerful. I was like in the shower, and then we eventually like blew up the tub. Everybody thought, okay, so by the morning, by like 10 a.m., this baby's definitely going to be here. So I was like excited. I was like, finally, we're doing this, and but also like fully in like the other world that is like labor world. And so we get in the tub. We get out of the tub. I'm like in the other room. I'm like moving all over the place, doing all these different, just managing the contractions. And by like noon the next day, the baby is not here. And we decided to do, my midwife checked me. We hadn't done any checks just because we didn't want to introduce like any risk of infection. And that's different in a home birth scenario than like a hospital scenario. So they checked me. I was like 9.5 centimeters, but there was a bit of a cervical lip that wasn't moving. And so we tried lots of different positions. We tried some like different techniques trying to move that cervical lip to allow him to like come down. And after another like hour and a half of like my body wanted to push. It was trying to push. So I was like, allow it to push. We were seeing if that would help. They checked me like an hour and a half later, and there was no difference in my dilation. And it had already been like 3 days at this point since the water broke. So I think I just mentally hit this point of like, what is the point in continuing to do the same thing that I have been doing if there has been no progress. And it was lack of progress for more than just that hour. It had been like pretty static for I think the last like 5 hours. So I talked with Daniel and brought in like my mom and sister. They were both there supporting me throughout this whole thing, and I had a doula. And I just ultimately made the decision that like I think it's time to go to the hospital. I think it's time to shift something because something's just not happening. Despite me feeling good, I mean, the contractions are painful and intense, but I feel good. Like I could keep going, but I just feel like something's just not happening. So you transfer. And my idea was I will get a epidural and I'll keep trying vaginally. But if I could just have some rest because I'm exhausted. I have been like throwing up and feeling terrible. I hadn't been sleeping. All the things I told myself I wouldn't do in labor happened. I was like, I'm going to hydrate so well. It's going to be like a marathon. Daniel's going to be like giving me snacks. I'm going to be taking them. I'm going to be resting. And like just none of that really happened, you know? So I get to the hospital and I'm like, just exhausted. And they were amazing. They gave me an epidural pretty quickly. I rested a little bit. Ultimately ended up pushing for another hour and a half. And that's when they discovered that they thought he was OP, sunny side up, like facing upward instead of down. And so that was helpful information just to know. And then I pushed another hour and a half there, and they checked me before and after. And while I fully dilated, that cervical lip was gone. He was not budging. So that was hard. And they asked me if I wanted to like do some more positions and pushing or something, like consider a C-section. And I was like, well, I might as well just keep pushing. Let's just keep trying. And when the doctor had tried to manipulate and kind of turn him, and once she did that, his heart rate was starting to kind of decelerate each time I had a contraction. And that was the first time that we saw any signs of that. His heart and him, generally, he was like great shape the entire labor. They would check him every single time I had a contraction at home. And so that was my midwife. We just kind of had, counseled her, and they were, them, and they recommended, they're like, well, this is the first time we're seeing him be affected. I'm afraid that if we continue with this plan as it is, that he might just have, like, he might feel the impacts of that. I don't know what position he's in now. And so that was the point where we like had a discussion, Daniel and I, it was emotional. I was crying. Daniel was crying. My midwife was crying. My sister was crying. I think because we'd just been through this huge journey together for days. And we're exhausted. But ultimately, the thing that my midwife said that really got to me was like, or not got to me, but like encouraged me to just like, it's okay. It's just the next step. They were like, at this point, he's probably going to be in great shape. Like, we don't know what will happen if we continue pushing, but there's probably a better chance that he will be alert and be able to breastfeed pretty quickly once he comes out. And I was like, that is my goal. That's a really important piece for me. So we decided to do the C-section, and they wheeled me in. Daniel came in soon after. I think that was the first time I felt a little fear, to be honest. Just like the bright lights of the room going in there, like, okay, this was unexpected. But I would say it was pretty uneventful. I got a little nauseous with the medications, but he came out, and we didn't know. We had not had a gender reveal or anything before. We had no idea who was in there. And they showed me this little baby through the clear drape out. They dropped the drape and they showed us, and we were like, oh my gosh, it's a boy. And and he cried, and it was just like the most beautiful moment, and we cried. And he was great. He was so feisty and pink and chubby and healthy. So, and I do feel like it was the right move, and he did get some skin on skin time soon after that. He was able to latch soon after that. And I think recovery, he was fine. He was totally fine. I had a little more, intense recovery having had a C-section. But, it was, I can't tell you how surprising it was to be in myself showing up at a hospital asking for a C-section or asking for an epidural and then eventually a C-section and being so okay with it. You know, I think it had been so, it had never been like what I thought was going to happen. It's not that I think those are bad options at all. It's just not what I saw happening. And it's given me a lot of perspective and compassion, I think, for there's just the ways in which we're not in control, and you know, the babies play a big part in this too. The one thing I left out that I think is really funny is as they did the C-section, the doctor says, "Is that his nose?" And we were like, "What?" They could see he was so wedged up in my uterus, and his head was tipped back instead of being tucked, which is why he wasn't coming out, I'm pretty sure. That they could see his nose literally like poking up into the top of my uterus. So
oh my gosh.
They told me I could have kept pushing for hours and he would have never budged. So
yeah.
That's like I'm really grateful for the ability to have a C-section. That just the medical technology, but also it's hard. Like you can't go. I can't escape going back to like, well, what would happen if I couldn't have had a C-section? You know, like in other times. But I do feel so grateful that we are where we are, and we had such a great team, and everything worked out safely.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for sharing that story. I think it's always so helpful for us to just talk about birth. And I think there are ways that you can listen to birth podcasts or whatever and hear people's stories, but especially for first time mothers and parents, hearing just about pregnancy and birth is so important, either before planning or being in that process, just because there's so much we don't talk about as a society. So it's so helpful to hear stories and to hear too that you have power to decide what you want for your body at any step of the journey. If you are full on, you know what, I just want a hospital birth, give me all the drugs. You can do that. You have the option to do that. There are the resources for that. If you feel empowered and like it fits with your values to have a home birth or do something in a birth center, anything in between, or even go to the hospital and have a natural birth without an epidural, whatever you want to try, you are allowed to make that decision, and you're allowed to change your mind at any point. And there's nothing wrong with changing your mind or needing extra support.
I agree.
And
I think ultimately, like the most important things, I think there's so much noise and messaging around like how you're supposed to give birth, the environment, or what you're supposed to do, drugs, no drugs, whatever. And I think honestly, I think it's so important that you go with what you feel comfortable doing. Like that is the most important part. Your body has to feel comfortable for that process, really. I mean, ideally. And that might be in the hospital, that might be a birth center, that might be at home. But I do appreciate the support team that we had. I did feel, I mean, despite it going differently than I expected, I felt empowered at every single step. And I think choosing the right providers that communicated with me in certain ways, I think that was really a big piece of that. And we just lucked out with a great team at the hospital because I had never met them before. But I feel really, really grateful for that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I love that you were still able to breastfeed. It sounds like skin to skin was something that you wanted to do and you were able to do. A lot of people are worried about or do have difficulty breastfeeding after a C-section for a wide variety of reasons. So if you are kind of counseling somebody prenatally or postnatally on lactation after a C-section, what are some things that you talk people through?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think, well, one, just with the perspective of my experience, and obviously that will not be the experience of everybody else, but I do think it's worth, even if you're like super healthy, home birth planned, I would just like think about a C-section. Not from like, you should have one, but I mean like know what happens in a C-section and know what requests you might have if you were ever in that scenario. I think that's helpful. And knowing the ways in which a C-section can change your postpartum, and especially the immediate postpartum experience. So the things that I would just kind of bring up, I think like having a C-section can sometimes mean there is a higher risk situation by default, because if it's like an emergency C-section, for example, that might mean that baby needs a little more attention postpartum. And I think the main thing we want to be concerned about when it comes to like initiating that relationship with lactation and breastfeeding or chest feeding is separation. So if there's any reason for that baby that if they need to be in the NICU, right? Like that is a really important piece, because a baby typically latches. We want them to latch really in that first hour after they're delivered. Mm-hmm. It's a really just important part, really important stimulation for your body to feel and get. Mm-hmm. I will say though, like having a C-section does not mean that you'll have challenges. It does not mean you can't breast or chest feed mm-hmm. normally. Because what happens in a C-section ultimately is the same as a vaginal birth, in that your baby is delivered and your placenta is delivered. And once that placenta leaves the body, mm-hmm. the progesterone hormone drops precipitously, and that's like kind of a big shift into the next stage of lactation. So that still happens. You still have that happening. Mm-hmm. I think things in the course of labor that could happen with a C-section are somewhat similar to still what could happen with a vaginal birth, but like if you have lots of fluids, sometimes that can shift things, can like add to swelling mm-hmm. in the breasts, and can definitely like artificially increase baby's weight, which can impact concerns about weight loss in the next few days. These are all things I think it's just mm-hmm. helpful to be familiar with and knowing going into, especially if you have to plan a C-section, just knowing the ways that a C-section can change the course a little bit. But I think thinking about connection, thinking about having some skin-to-skin like quickly soon after would be really important. You can request that of your team or your partner if you have one there with you, just to kind of help facilitate that, because you're going to be not really able to do that by yourself. It's, as far as I know, pretty uncommon for people to be fully out during C-sections these days. So people are alert and conscious, so usually they can at least put the baby on your chest and you can see them soon after. If for some reason mm-hmm. you were completely out, I would just say like having baby around you as soon as you wake up and trying to have that latch happen soon. And really like trying to use that, they call it the golden hour, right? That first hour after delivery, whether it's vaginal or C-section, trying to have baby connect with you, latch on the breast. And I think it would be worth definitely, I'd say this to everybody, but especially if there's a C-section, especially if you're concerned about lactation getting started, doing a prenatal lactation class of some form, like mm-hmm. just understanding the physiology of it, I think would be really, really helpful. Mm-hmm. And so that you kind of know the normal course of things. And recognizing that like a baby tends to latch in that first hour, and if not, then soon after, and they can feed every hour, every couple hours. And I bring that up just because mm-hmm. if the baby is separated from you, then the pump is what's going to take the place of the baby. So mm-hmm. I think the kind of timeline that I was taught is like within, you really want to start pumping. And I think as soon as possible would be ideal, but definitely within the first 6 hours after baby is delivered, mm-hmm. just to help your body recognize that, okay, we're shifted. There's a baby we need to start producing this milk for, and shift the colostrum to mm-hmm. milk. So I think those are the main things I would think about, and really just requesting support, asking for lactation to visit you. Yeah. Be the squeaky wheel, ask your questions. Don't feel embarrassed because you don't know what you're doing. No one knows what they're doing. It's hard. Mm-mm. It's really hard. And I think there's this conception out there that like, oh, it's natural, so it should come naturally, and it's gonna be birds and rainbows are gonna come out. And your body hormonally tends to know what to do, yes, but you have a whole little another human being helping you and doing this. It's like your dance partner. One of the other lactation consultants I used to work mm-hmm. with said that, like, you might know how to dance, but your dance partner doesn't know how to dance. But in the case of a first-time birth, neither of you know how to dance. You're both learning the steps together. And that takes often support and like people helping you to understand like what's normal and how to be comfortable. So asking for support early and often, I think, is one of my best recommendations, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Recognizing that, like, yes, we have given birth and fed and grown babies and small children for as long as humans have been alive. But honestly, humans are pretty bad at reproduction. Like, we really are not very efficient in general. And so it's okay when things are tough. And that's why we have these resources that exist. It's why we have lactation consultants, etc.
Yeah, because
and for folks, go
I
ahead.
was just gonna say, I think because the biggest shift is like we're just not seeing it around us as much. I think lactation consultants are kind of taking the place of like what would have otherwise been like a mother, an aunt, a sister that was helping someone, you know, with breastfeeding.
Right.
They already did it. So yeah, I think that's a big shift.
Absolutely. Absolutely. For folks who have difficulty, maybe they had a goal of breastfeeding and it's just not working out, what encouragement do you have for them?
I think I have so much compassion, and I think it's hard because I think parents put so much pressure on ourselves to do things a certain way, and that like that is success. There can be no failure.
Yeah.
But I think the thing that is really hard to picture, especially your first pregnancy, is who this little person is going to be, how they are going to cooperate with your plans. And it may work, it may not work. And I think recognizing that like we are not 100% in control, and that is really hard. We can do our best and still things might not work out. So I think having compassion for yourself, recognizing that that's a reality. It doesn't mean that you're a failure. And if to any extent you were able to get your baby to latch, or any colostrum, any mature milk, like any drop, literally any drop is helpful and beneficial. And I think it's the conversation I often have with a lot of the parents I meet with, especially who are struggling and having issues early on, is just breastfeeding, chest feeding is great. Breast milk is amazing. I'm not here to say anything different, but I think the mental health of the parents, that being healthy and them being supported and feeling good and being present is arguably more important for that baby, right? Yeah. And if the feeding is what's causing so much stress and anxiety that you are not able to be there and be there mentally, I think that's where it might be time to make some changes. And I think it's always helpful to do that in, you know, having some support of a lactation consultant or someone else, you know, familiar with like infant feeding and infant needs. But I have a lot of compassion for that scenario, because I know it's one of the most common, I think, stressors in the early postpartum days is just trying to get the feeding all straightened out and not painful. I think that's hard too.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think, you know, we had a need for like the breast is best movement and kind of re-promotion of breastfeeding in like late 80s, 90s, early 2000s, because there was a really big influence of the formula industry that was like not ethical and not okay. But we are now at a place where there are many compassionate lactation consultants that are going to help you give fully informed consent, give you all of the tips you possibly need, and help guide you. And if you ever feel shamed for the decision that you make to not exclusively breastfeed, not breastfeed at all, whatever that is, you deserve a different
provider
kind of support.
I agree.
Different provider.
I think the way I always approach it is like, I want to educate people so that they can make consensual decisions about themselves, their bodies, and their plan. There's no judgment. Yeah. It's a judgment-free zone here.
Absolutely. Well, I have loved this conversation today, Natalie. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Any other final little bits or pieces of information, encouragement, inspiration that you have for folks listening?
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me. I really enjoyed talking with you. I guess, I don't know, I think our discussion has kind of circled around lactation and birth a lot. And I think I just listened to so many podcasts around birth, getting ready, you know, in the early, like, or not early, but like just throughout pregnancy. And I think that's helpful, but also just like being open to the experience and the way that it will naturally go for you. It's going to be different than anything else I'm sure you hear. And I guess it sounds like the theme is like asking for support early and often. And I'm happy to be that for people if they're interested in reaching out, you know, through our website or Instagram, TikTok. It's a big passion of mine, all of these topics. So yeah, I've really enjoyed talking about them.
Yeah, awesome. I love all of that. Asking for support early and often. There is no shame in needing help in this process. I love that. So you said it, you work for Feed Your Zest as a dietitian, lactation consultant virtually. So you can find Natalie and you can work with her whenever she's free. Her calendar is open and ready for new clients at www.feedyourzest.com. And she's amazing. We love having her on her team. I know she can't wait to support you.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks so much, Natalie. Have a lovely rest of your day.
Thank you, you too.